Braja Jana Ranjana Jasadanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Chamunatira Bonachari Chamunatira Bonachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Baladhari Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Baladhari Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Bonachari Yamunatira Bonachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Baladhari Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Bonachari Yamunatira Bonachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Jai Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Stotara Sat Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Stotara Sat Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shekho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Shri Shri Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Shamaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Narayanam Naraskricham Naram Chaivam Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudirayat Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashlokir Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 21st verse, 33rd text. Maitreyo Vacha Evam Tam Ambasya Yata Bhagavan Pratyagakshayaha Jagama Bandhu Sarasaha Sarasvatya Parishriyat Maitreyo Vacha Evam Ta Anubasyata Bhagavan Pratyagakshayaha Jagama Bindu Saran Asaha Sarasvatya Parishiritat Maitreyo Vacha Evam Tadanu Basyata Bhagavan Pratyagakshajaha Jagama Bandhu Sarasaha Sarasvatya Parishritat Maitreyo Vacha Evam Tamar Basyata Bhagavan Pratyagakshajaha Jagama Bindu Sarasaha Sarasvatya Parishritat
Maitreyo Vacha Evam Tamar Basyata Bhagavan Pratyagakshajaha Jagama Bindu Sarasaha
Jagama Bindu Sarasaha
Sarasvatya Parishritat
Sarasvatya Parishritat
Maitreyo Vacha Evam Tamar Basyata Bhagavan Pratyagakshajaha Jagama Bindu Sarasa Sarasvatya
Parishritat. Ladies, Maitreyo Vacha Evam Tadanubhasyata Bhagavan Pratyagakshajaha Jagama Bindu Sarasaha Parishritat. Maitreyo Vacha, the great sage Maitreya said, Evam, thus, Tam, to him, Anubhasya, having spoken, Ata, then, Bhagavan, the Lord, Pratyak, directly, Aksha, by senses, Jaha, who is perceived, Jagama, went away, Bindu Sarasaha, from Lake Bindu Sarovara, Sarasvatya, by the river Saraswati, Parishyatat, encircled. Translation. Maitreya went on. Thus, having spoken to Gardama Muni, the Lord, who reveals himself only when the senses are in Krishna consciousness, departed from that lake called Bindu Sarovara, which was encircled by the river Saraswati. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. One word in this verse is very significant. The Lord is stated here to be Pratyaga Akshajaha. Pratyaga Akshajaha. He is imperceptible to material senses, but still he can be seen. This appears to be contradictory. We have material senses, but how can we see the Supreme Lord? He is called Adhokshaja, which means that he cannot be seen by the material senses. Akshaja means knowledge perceived by material senses. Because the Lord is not an object that can be understood by speculation with our material senses, he is also called Ajita. He will conquer, but no one can conquer him. What does it mean, then, that still he can be seen? It is explained that no one can hear the transcendental name of Krishna, no one can understand his transcendental form, and no one can assimilate his transcendental pastimes. It is not possible. How then is it possible that he can be seen and understood? When one is trained in devotional service and renders service unto him, gradually one's senses are purified of material contamination. When one's senses are thus purified, then one can see, one can understand, one can hear, and so on. The purification of the material senses and perception of the transcendental form, name, and quality of Krishna are combined together in one word, Pratyag Akshaja, which is used here. Maitreya went on. Translation. Maitreya went on. Thus, having spoken to Gardama Muni, the Lord, who reveals himself only when the senses are in Krishna consciousness, departed from that lake called Bindu Sarovara, which was encircled by the river Saraswati. Narayanam naraskricham naram chaivam narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayat nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamashloker bhavati bhakti ravnoshakitayi. Maitreya is speaking about something that Prabhupada calls contradictory. That is, that Krishna cannot be seen except by purifying the senses. Purity is the force is part of a phrase that was, according to Kripamoya, coined by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, although others say that it was not coined by him, that it was a general of maybe China or someplace like that, and that a scroll was brought to Prabhupada with these words on it. Purity is the force, preaching is the essence, utility is the principle, and what's the other one?
Books are the basis.
Huh?
Books are the basis.
Books are the basis. And Prabhupada saw it, and he approved of it, and it was used over and over again in the Sankirtan newsletter. So I don't know which story is correct, but it's quite possible that it was formulated by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So there's a contradiction, apparent contradiction, in that unless the senses are purified, Krishna cannot be perceived or seen. There was a devotee who has departed now, named Shrutidhar. He became Shrutidam later on. He was at Bhaktivedanta Manor, and there was a drama depicting the reading of the deities. And Shrutidam played the part of Srila Prabhupada. And he studied the facial expressions, the movements, and of Prabhupada very, very intricately before the drama went into force, and it was performed by all the devotees at Bhaktivedanta Manor. He played the part of Prabhupada greeting the deities. And I saw this drama, and I was very amazed at how much he simulated Srila Prabhupada's actions. He had the same facial expressions, the same movements, the same voice when he talked. And it was a very wonderful drama because the person who played the part of Prabhupada was actually acting as if he were Prabhupada. And that's one of the symptoms of a good actor or actress, that they can play the part of someone living or dead who had specific intonations and specific functions and movements. And it was a very impressive thing. So if purity is the force, what people don't realize when they come to Krishna consciousness is that they're very enamored at first by the friendliness, by the music, by the dancing, by the food, by everything. And the nice spiritual atmosphere, the nice material atmosphere, especially in this part of the world where it's very green. People are very enamored. But what they don't realize is that the sense they cannot perceive Krishna. This devotee, Shrudidama, used to see, like Prabhupada, used to see in the stone deities the actual presence of Prabhupada. He could perceive the presence of Prabhupada. He could actually see Prabhupada. So when people say that they want to see God and why he can't be seen, it's a very difficult thing to answer because it requires purification of the senses. So in one way of looking at things, the Hare Krishna movement is a movement of purification of the senses. Ordinarily, we see the deities as dolls or stone or sculptures or representations that aren't the real thing. But Prabhupada was able to see in stone the real presence of Krishna. And advanced devotees don't see the deities as stone or marble or pictures or drawings. They see that Krishna is actually present. He's in person. So the senses have to become purified. And even the Oxford English Dictionary and the American dictionaries, Merriam-Webster dictionaries, define purity as getting rid of all unlikely elements. So this is what the Oxford Dictionary says about purity. It's the process of making something spiritually or ceremoniously clear. Purification of the mind through reflection and contemplation. The goal of the religious fast is purification of the soul. Purification means being conscious of evil. For example, and then Webster defines purity as, that was British. The American dictionary defines it as to clear something from material defilement or imperfection, or to clear from guilt or moral ceremonial blemish, or to free from undesirable elements. So even materialism and materialists, these lexicographers that are writing these dictionaries, in a way they're touching indirectly on something that borders on spirituality when they say that purification means getting rid of undesirable elements. So when the senses are purified, then it's possible to see the deity not as stone, not as marble, not as a picture, but as Krishna himself. So that is the resolution of the contradiction that Krishna is not visible or not perceivable to the ordinary senses. The senses have to become purified. So when it was said that purity is the force, that was the basis of the Krishna consciousness movement. There must be purity, purifying elements, or purity. So everyone who dances and sings and cooks for Krishna and speaks about Krishna, talks about Krishna to his or her friends, is doing so from the purification point of view. When we read these words in the Srimad Bhagavatam about Krishna, they're not ordinary words. They're spiritual. There's a difference between matter and spirit. And the difference is that spiritual senses, the senses of seeing, smelling, hearing, and everything, tasting, can be purified. Nowadays, people are very concerned that there is pollution in the air, in the water, in the ground, and to a certain degree, this is true. It is very polluted, and but the real pollution is in our consciousness. That when consciousness is purified, everything can be seen in its reality. So instead of seeing a tree or a bush or grass, we see everything as a living being. It's said in the Bhagavad Gita that whether we see an advanced soul of Brahman or a dog eater or an elephant, we see instead of seeing them from a material point of view, we see them from a spiritual point of view, that they are souls. This is something that the Western world is not entirely clear about. And in some of the religious philosophies, they say that only human beings have souls. So there's a saying that Christ once said, it's in part of the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not kill. But it doesn't say that thou shalt not kill human beings. So kill, according to Prabhupada, means killing of anything. Trees, plants, insects, birds, animals. Killing means thou shalt not kill, not just human beings. So it does not say in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not kill human beings. Nowadays, a person is severely punished. Capital punishment means that he's executed for killing another human being. It's called murder. But thousands and literally thousands of animals, especially cows, are slaughtered every day. And there's no punishment from the killers are not punished. But capital punishment is such that, from what we understand, people are exonerated. People are purified, or they're punished. Because in the next life, if they are not punished, they have to be killed like they were killing animals. So in a sense, the Krishna consciousness movement supports capital punishment, that if there is murder of a human being, that person has to be executed. And we even go so far as to say that slaughter of the cows is a sin. It's actually wrong. And that people can be purified of their sins if they're executed. Then the next life, they will not have to undergo the punishment of being slaughtered by animals. There's a very interesting painting in one of the books of a human being slaughtering a cow that's tied up to a stake in the ground, and the human being has an animal head. It's just a sort of symbolic representation of how, if the senses aren't purified, we can be killed by those who we kill, either animal or vegetable or human. That is the case. So purity is very, very important. And Prabhupada says that this word in Sanskrit, see if I can find it. Pratyak, directly, and aksha, by senses, is translated that the senses must be purified, and that this is an important word. Pratyaksha akshaja. Pratyag means direct perception, and akshaya. He is imperceptible to material senses, was what Prabhupada says. But still he can be seen, and this appears to be contradictory. We have material senses. The Lord is called adhokshaja, which means that he cannot be seen by the material senses. So when people say that I want to see God, I want to hear God, I want to know what God is, they're coming from a material point of view. And when those very senses of hearing, chanting, smelling, tasting, and hearing are completely purified, then one can actually see and hear Krishna in these words of Srimad Bhagavatam, in the deity made of stone or wood, or picture, or paint, or jewelry. There is an actual sense of Krishna consciousness because the senses become purified. So the whole process of Krishna consciousness is a process of purification of the senses. Once a priest who gave confessions told us that he was very impressed with the fact that that confessing to a sinful activity, does not purify the heart. The heart must be purified and cleansed of desire to commit sinful activity. And then and only then can one perceive the Krishna in reality. So the priest, there was in a Catholic church, and he was very impressed with our explanation. He actually told us to talk with him personally, and gave us a donation of $50, which he didn't hand us the money. He just put it in a sealed envelope, and later on we opened it and found out that he was so impressed with our answer that prayaschitta, or atonement, cannot be achieved simply by confessing. One must have the sinful desires removed from the heart. That is purification. And unless this purification takes place, one will continue to engage in sinful activities again and again and again. So the whole process of Krishna consciousness is a system of purification. It's purifying the senses so that we can perceive God as He really is, not just as some artists and poets have depicted that God is an elderly figure with a man with a long beard sitting on a throne up in the clouds, but something very different from that. And something very different from that can be perceived only by devotees. And only when they are purified can they see that God is not depicted as an old man with a beard. He's depicted as a very young man. And even when he was 125 years old and had children and great-grandchildren, he looked very young, very youthful, not older than 25, even though he was 125 years old. So that is, and married 16,000 wives, that is the nature of God, the person. He has that, he is the master of all mystic power. It is said in the Bhagavad Gita, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, that Krishna is the master of all mysticism. So he can look at the age of 125, he can look at the age of 25, and he can perform any magical things. Nowadays, people think it is a very wonderful thing that we can float on the water. We can acquire something from far away, Prapti CD. But that is possible by Krishna. He can do anything mystical. He can change his shape. He can become a man. He can become a woman. He can become an old man. He can become an insect. He can do anything. He can become a fish. He can become a turtle, which he has done in the past many times. And Krishna can be perceived in many ways because he is the master of all mystic powers. A magician is considered very advanced if he can create an illusion that he is cutting someone in half, or he's cutting someone's head off. But those are all magical performances. They're illusions. Whereas Krishna can, as a master of all mystic powers, he can do all these things in a way that that look completely real, even though they're artificial. And so one of the things Prabhupada says in the first canto and the 7th chapter, Prayers by Queen Kunti, which was made into a book, is that one can perceive Krishna only when one is materially exhausted. And we have the example of Raghunath Goswami, who was born in a very wealthy family, but he wrote, among other things, Jiva Goswami wrote many things, and he's considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest, philosopher in the world. And in Nectar Devotion, which was also written by one of the Goswamis, Rupa Goswami, it is said that one should not be neglectful of ordinary things. So when Raghunath's father and uncle were attempted to be arrested, they learned of this and they fled. But Raghunath Goswami was so intelligent and so unneglectful of ordinary things that he convinced the government that they should drop the charges against his father for embezzling a certain small amount of money because they were tax collectors. So this is an instance of how one cannot be neglectful of ordinary things. And when one is dedicated to Krishna, one can see ordinary things as extraordinary things, and can see that everything is actually formed by Krishna, and everything is alive, whether plant, animal, insect, bird, or anything that has a soul. And taking that soul's life is actually sinful. So these are some of the points about purification that have to be mentioned. And I'm going to read the verse again. Maitreya went on, having spoken to Kardama Muni, the Lord reveals himself only when the senses are in Krishna consciousness. departed from that lake called Bindu Sarovara, which was encircled by the river Saraswati. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes, one word in this verse is very significant. The Lord is stated here to be Pratyag Akshaja. He is imperceptible to material senses, but still he can be seen. This appears to be contradictory. We have material senses, but how can we see the Supreme Lord? He is called Adhokshaja, which means that he cannot be seen by the material senses. Akshaja means, quote, open quote, knowledge perceived by material senses, close quote. Because the Lord is not an object that can be understood by speculation with our material senses, he is also called Ajita. He will conquer, but no one can conquer him. What does it mean, then, that still he can be seen? It is explained that no one can hear the transcendental name of Krishna, no one can understand his transcendental form, and no one can assimilate his transcendental pastimes. It is not possible. Then how is it possible that he can be seen and understood? When one is trained in devotional service and renders service unto him, gradually one's senses are purified of material contamination. When one's senses are thus purified, then one can see, one can understand, one can hear, and so on. The purification of the material senses and perception of the transcendental form, name, and quality of Krishna are combined together in one word, Pratyak Akshaja, which is used here. I'll read the verse again and then we'll open it up if anyone wants to ask anything or make any comments. Maitreya went on, as having spoken to Kardama Muni, the Lord reveals himself only when he sees, only when the senses are in Krishna consciousness, departed from that lake called Bindu Sarovara, which was encircled by the river Saraswati. So, does anyone want to ask anything or say anything relevant to this verse or anything about Krishna consciousness? Now's the time. Yes?
Thank you, Maharaj. I was thinking that in this process, it's so wonderful that, as you say, until our senses are purified, we can't actually see Krishna. But then also there's that process of abhasya, you know, where the sun hasn't completely appeared yet, but still there's a glimpse of what's coming. So even as devotees, we haven't become completely purified yet, but still we're tasting something already that is not available outside. So I was thinking Krishna's very kind like that.
Thank you.
Like the materialists have that saying of pie in the sky about religion, that you don't get anything till you die, but it's not like that in our process.
Thank you. Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Yeah, I'm very attracted to the purity and hearing that. Some things I wanted to mention was also going to the Holy Dham is great purification, but also we have foods in the mode of, in the different modes of gushan, passion and ignorance. So what I've seen sometimes is devotees that leave Krishna consciousness, they don't go fully back to meat eating, but they go to maybe, you know, eating onions, garlic, mushrooms, eggs. So how do you explain for them maybe not to eat eggs? What, is there a way to maybe say, you know, that's not going to be good for your consciousness?
Well, there's a living entity inside an egg, and living entities come into existence through eggs, through perspiration, through embryo, and so therefore it's wrong. And another thing is that purification is not necessarily permanent. One can purify the senses and then regress back to material consciousness, to material senses. So an act of purification is not necessarily a permanent action. So one can regress. One can go through all the stages, starting with Shraddha and ending in Prema, and still slip back and go back into the material world. So there's no guarantee. that we're trying our best, but we're not guaranteed of anything. So therefore, even people who are very spiritually advanced, sometimes we might say slip and fall back into the material world. We call it blooping. That's the phrase, the sort of slang phrase that's used for that. It does happen, unfortunately, it does happen. Anything else?
Thank you, Gurush. Correct me if I'm wrong. I heard that we can purify ourselves to some certain extent, and the rest is upon Krishna. Like we can achieve Namabhasa stage of chanting, but not Shuddhanamam.
Well, as I was saying, there's no guarantee that purification is going to be permanent. And as we have seen, it's possible to slip back into the material world. It's not usual, but it does happen, unfortunately. Because initially we're very attracted, because Krishna consciousness people are very friendly. They live in a very materially beautiful atmosphere. The music is fantastic. The food is wonderful. And everything, and the philosophy is sublime. Everything about it is very, very blissful. But it soon wears off, and then things become very difficult. So pursuing purity is a very difficult thing to do, but it can be done, and those who are sitting here are attempting to engage in purification.
Yeah, my question wasn't about blooping, but about achieving the pure stage of, like, for example, seeing God in the deity's form. So again, my understanding is we can try to purify our senses, but then until the deities want to reveal themselves as Krishna, we won't be able, by our force, see them.
Yeah, it's a very important point, that ultimately Krishna controls. We have another slang term, control freak. But and in a way, Krishna is that, but he's not a freak. He just has absolute control over everything. Whether we're going to stay in Krishna consciousness, whether we're going to leave Krishna consciousness, that's Krishna's final decision. It's not our decision. But we can try doing our best, but ultimately the final decision has to rest with the Supreme Lord. And sometimes Prabhupada has said that being unfortunate is worse than being demonic. That how is it that one can be so pure and so advanced and then leave Krishna consciousness? It's even happened that Prabhupada's personal servants have left the frontline preaching of Krishna consciousness. It's because they're unfortunate. They're in a way they're worse than demons, because they have this unfortunate quality of having become very purified and then losing it all, and then not seeing that Krishna is ultimately in charge of everything. It's part of what happens. Unfortunately, it does. So it's not necessarily that you're wrong, that we try and Krishna does everything. But that's always the case. Unless Krishna condones our actions, they're fruitless. They're useless. So we're hoping that Krishna is going to condone our actions. Yes.
Thank you for your class, Maharaj. I'm just wondering what the first things you do in the morning when you wake up are. If you.
The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I try not to be depressed, because I am very depressed. In those first 10 seconds, it's very, very difficult. But I find that chanting Hare Krishna helps a lot.
Thank you.
This lady had something to say?
The devotees asked Srila Prabhupada, at the time of death, will you be there? And Prabhupada said yes. So one of our god brothers, Pritiputra Maharaj, he left Krishna consciousness and he got involved in illicit things, and he got AIDS. And he was in the hospital, and the student doctors came to see him, and they thought he died already. And all of a sudden, he sat up and he said, Prabhupada, you have come, you have come, you have come. And so one of the student doctors, he met the devotees on the street, and he said to the devotees, who is Prabhupada? And they said, he's our spiritual master, he's the one who started this movement. And he told the story of Pritiputra Maharaj. So Krishna must have wanted him.
That's a very good perception. Well, Krishna is always, as we know, he attained the spiritual world, or he attained Krishna Loka, and we will see him after we die. And then there's a saying in Hindi, I don't know the exact translation, but that our Krishna consciousness will be tested at the time of death. If we're able to remember Krishna at that time, we will have perfected ourselves. But, you know, what someone said to Pritiputra or anybody else is not necessarily always true at all times and all places, because time, place, and circumstance come into the picture. And sometimes he says things that are controversial or reversible. But at the same time, and then it's also said that there's no atheists in the foxholes. So when a person is faced with imminent death, then that person tends to think of or pray to God. Like people that are about to die in an airplane crash because the airplane is diving into the ocean or something. They start praying, even though they're devout atheists, they start praying to God. So sometimes it does happen that way. And there are other people who, at the time of death, just think that they're getting what they deserve and there's no God in control. So these are some of the reflections upon that thing. That it's not always true that if a person has AIDS or dies that they're thinking of God. But it does happen, and it's a good thing if it happens.
I guess you could say, to make it your goal.
To make it what?
To make it your goal.
Yeah, if it's our goal that we think of Krishna all the time and we dream of Krishna, we meditate upon Krishna, and then we will think of Krishna at the time of death. That is a very important meditation. We might call it a goal. Thank you. So anything else? So we'll stop at that point? No, there's another comment or a question outside? No? Yes?
There was one young boy sitting there that was going outside now, and he wanted to say something.
Anyway, whatever. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Mukunda Maharaj.